broadcasting worldwide from a studio inside global headquarters of RP Enterprises in Kansas City.
Hey, gang! Ladies and gentlemen, Papa's home!
This is the Papa Ron Podcast.
File transfer in progress.
With Ronnie Phillips and Jillian Gregg.
Showtime.
All right, episode 33 of the Papa Ron Podcast, and again, brought to you by our friendly folks at Brown Piercy Cattle Company. And now I got to find the copy. I got started here and I wasn't ready. Here it is. For years, they've been breeding registered Angus cattle for generations with one thought in mind: quality beef for consumers. The goal is to deliver prime-graded beef directly to customers' homes more affordably than you can purchase at the store. Better beef, conveniently delivered at a lower price than the grocery store. Find them online at brownpiercycattle.com. And we are so excited. I'm super goober excited. Is everything okay?
I know you are.
We're good. Super goober excited because I'm a super goober sports fan to have in studio former Kansas City Chiefs quarterback, Trent Green. Yeah.
So excited.
Yeah. I am pumped about this. I'm maybe just a little bit nervous as well.
No need to be nervous. I'm not like a big intimidating guy.
You're not. Well, you're a big guy.
Right,
you're
right.
not intimidating. You look kind of like a wuss.
I'm not scary. I'm not scary.
Oh my
I'm
gosh.
kidding. I'm kidding.
Yes.
All right, so to get started here, Trent Green, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yeah. Definitely.
Oh, you didn't raise your right hand. Doggone it. So I guess.
Definitely. I'll raise both hands.
All right, so the first question, number 10 or number 12?
Oh, 10.
10.
Yeah, I was
You were 12 for your entire life.
Yeah, I was 12. Let's see. Actually, I didn't start playing tackle football, until 7th grade. My first year playing, I was the starting left tackle and starting free safety. What a combination there, right? It's like,
Oh my gosh.
yeah. So, and then I switched over towards the end of that year. The guy got hurt. I moved over. Long story short, ended up 12 the next year. So I was 12, 8th grade, all through high school, all through college. And then I get to the NFL, and I was drafted by the Chargers, and the starting quarterback was number 12.
Okay.
I wanted number 10, and the punter was number 10. I was like, okay, what's left? And Chargers are like, how about number 7? I was like, okay. So I was 7 for a year, and then I get to I was out of football for a year. Went to Canada for a couple weeks, that whole thing, and then actually in Canada I was number 10.
Really?
And then when I got to now they're the Washington Commanders.
Yep.
7 was Theismann's number.
So nobody's wearing that.
They're like, you can't have that.
Yeah.
Somebody
Right.
was using 12s. Gus Farrat was using 12. And I was like, well, I was 10 up in Canada. So
Right.
maybe I just go. And then
From there on.
From there on.
And you wore 10 in St. Louis too?
I was 10 in St. Louis. Here's the funny thing about that. So when I get to St. Louis and talking with Martz and Coach Vermeil and that whole deal, I said, well, I'd really like number 10 because I've been that for a while. Well, Kurt Warner was number 10 the previous year. And they're like, oh, that's not going to be a problem. You're going to be number 10. And Kurt's told this story. I didn't have a conversation with him. The team didn't have a conversation with him.
Yeah.
He was the third quarterback and hadn't played a whole lot. They're just
Right.
like, yeah, you got number 10. Don't
It's
worry
fine.
about it.
Yeah.
So then I get to the locker room and I go, Kurt, I had no idea that you were number 10. And he's like,
which is a little bit of a isn't that a little bit of a dig?
did they just took it? Yeah. I didn't
Yeah.
know.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's like, don't worry about it. I wanted number 13. And Steve Bono, I think, had maybe been there or finished his career.
Oh.
Somebody had the
Oh,
number
interesting.
13.
Okay.
So
I remember
he
Steve wearing 13
He
here.
wanted the number 13. And
couldn't
so
have
when
it.
everything kind of shuffled around, he ended up getting he's like, no, I want 13. I'm good with that. You can have 10. And I'm like, I thought maybe I'd have to buy him dinner or something. He's like, no, don't.
All of this over a jersey number.
I know. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that
That's
crazy?
so-
Yeah.
that is crazy.
Well, and that's why I went to him. I was like, I want to, just let you know I didn't steal it from you. They said I could have it. So,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That is a crazy story.
Are you superstitious at all? Like, is the 10 any of that? No.
No.
But there are a lot of players in the league that
there
are.
are. Oh no, there's been a lot of big money past.
How much money are we talking?
transactions. Oh, there's
What's the biggest number you've heard for that kind of transaction?
Well, it's different now because the money now compared to what it was when I played is significantly different.
So back when you played,
back when I played, I mean, there were guys $50,000 to $75,000.
Wow.
To get someone to change.
So if there was some way that I could buy real estate in the NFL jersey numbers, I could make a fortune pretty quick.
That's how super. I mean, some of the guys. I mean, there were some guys like, hey, I don't want money. I'll take a new car. I'll take a new ATV, or I'll take a new jet ski or something. I mean, it's just like there was a lot of bartering going on.
That's crazy.
And it didn't happen all the time. Don't get me wrong. It generally was that big money free agent guy that came in.
Gotcha.
Now the salaries are, it's crazy.
Oh no, it's ridiculous
crazy now. So I can't even imagine what guys are doing for numbers.
Sure.
Speaking of which, and we're going to get into, there's so much we can cover with you, and how much time do we have with you? About an hour?
And in that around
okay,
that time,
all right. So we'll try to pack it in as quickly as we can.
Tell yourself, this is what I do because I'm always late for things. Tell yourself 45 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Right?
I don't know that I can cover everything that I want to talk about in 45 minutes.
You can't in an hour though either. So anyway.
Sometimes these podcasts go 3 hours, Trent.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
You'll have to let me know how the last 2 hours go.
He's like, not today they don't.
Yeah. Roger Goodell.
Yeah.
That guy I heard just is up for a contract renewal.
Correct.
And
That's what I'm
he's
hearing
going
as well.
to make, what was it that I heard? Like Patrick Mahomes money, like $500 million. And his
over the course of his career as the commissioner.
That is ridiculous, isn't it?
I think the other way. I think so his bosses are the 32 owners. The amount of money that he's made those 32 bosses, he deserves every penny he can get. I mean, if you look at when he took over for Paul Tagliabue, and I have a lot of respect for what Paul Tagliabue did because he took over for Pete Rozelle, and the way the league was transformed, and I had multiple conversations early in my career where Paul Tagliabue would come to meetings, and I always made a point of introducing myself, even though I was like the scrub at the bottom of the roster. I always made a point of introducing, and just because I wanted to have those conversations with those types of guys, because I didn't know where my career was going, if I was going to play football, if I was going in the business world, whatever it was. So when Roger took over, the values of the teams compared to what the values of the teams are now, the TV contracts now, the amount of money. So when I hear people argue, Tagliabue's getting paid too much, and I think it's probably around that $50 million a year range.
Are we talking about Tagliabue or
no? I'm sorry, I'm talking about Goodell.
Goodell, yeah.
So Goodell, his last contract was reported to be around $50 million a year, and I would imagine this next extension maybe even more, even to the point where I think a lot of his contracts, from what I've heard, are similar to like players. There's incentives in there. There's different things in there.
Makes sense.
I think the NFL is a multi-billion-dollar business, so I think he gets security for he and his family. Use of a private plane. There's things that are written into it that would be fitting of a guy that's CEO of a billion dollar business.
Does he get NFL players get a pension after they've stopped playing, right?
Yes, if you're in, once you get vested, there's a certain number of, it used to be when I was in, you had to be 3 years and then like 6 games. So 3 years and 6 games would say give you like 4 years of credit. Now I think it's just 2 years and a few games. So I mean,
and how long
you can achieve that quickly?
Where I'm ultimately going with this question is, will he at some point when he retires have some sort of pension that is it for the duration of his life, or is it go on for multi-generations? And how does that look for former players? I
would imagine that he's going to have something like that. I would imagine. I have no idea. I would imagine he's got healthcare written in there. I would imagine, there's a lot of things like that.
How does it look for someone like yourself, a former player?
So right now, the way the collective bargaining agreement is set up, as former players, if you're vested, you get 4 years of health care, and then you're on your own. Which, even when I was the scrub at the bottom of the roster and not making nearly what everybody else was making, I always thought that was an important thing. I was like, at some point in time, we're going to have to pay for insurance. And now that I do have to pay for it, I realize how messed up our healthcare system is, right? And the amount of money it especially for us, a family of 5, covering all that, the dental, and it's crazy to say. So I think at some point in time that will eventually get changed for the players. I would think it would have been done sooner based on the contracts now and what's going on. But, that's ultimately, you know, the veteran players are at the mercy of the current players, how they want to structure things and how they want to, you know, and I always knew the arguments I always got in those meetings was, well, I want my money. If you mean I got to give up some of my money to take it, and I'm like, no, but those guys before us are the reason why we're making what we are today. Sure. So we need to set that up. And I believe me, I got shot down all the time. They're like, listen, you're lucky to even be in this room. So unless you want to get kicked out of the room, no. So it could be better from a healthcare standpoint. There is a 401k that they put. There's an annuity because what was happening a lot of times when you know, I'm going back to the early 90s. And when that first collective bargaining agreement after Reggie White and a number of guys wanted free agency, and how that, you know, 92, 93 is when the salary cap started. My rookie class was the first year of the rookie salary cap. Then 94 season was the first year of a salary cap. And, you know, so I've kind of been on top of that for a while. You know, a lot of that has changed and how it's kind of unfolded. And there were players that, okay, we can't get our 401k till we're almost 60 years old. So what about that window of time, right? You know, between when we're done playing it, you know, so that's when the annuity came in. That's, you know, so they've added things over the years so that players, you know, some of the players and most of the players, I should say, end up having a second career after their careers are done, because longevity is not a thing in the NFL. I was blessed to play 15 years and incredibly fortunate and blessed, but a lot of guys don't. I mean, they're only playing 2, 3, 4 years, something like that. So having the ability to have a second career or a third career, whatever that may be, and find some things. So yeah, the NFL has done a good job of layering different retirement things that guys can get, but you're still not. It's not, if you're playing 3-4 years in the NFL, that's not going to sustain you for the rest of your life. I mean, it's just not, unless you're Jamarcus Russell, you know, the quarterback for the Raiders that made like $50 million and only played a couple of years. So I mean, unless you're something like that, and I'm not knocking Jamarcus. I'm just saying, you know, unless you get a big payday, and you're only there for a few years,
it really applies to any of those first overall picks, you know, that got huge salaries before they kind of restricted that, you know, how much you could pay a first or a number one overall pick. Right.
They adjusted
and
that.
He kind of, was it him or
Bradford?
Bradford, that's who it was. It was shortly after him.
Sam Bradford, he was the last one. The next year was Cam Newton, and the difference between contracts and salaries and the amount Bradford was able to make compared to, and Cam Newton made plenty of money, but it was just, that whole
apparently not enough. He's still trying to get in there.
That was part of the next collective bargaining agreement was, okay, we got to restructure, because now you got these guys coming in the league that are making, you know, a 10-year vet is making substantially less than a guy coming in that hasn't proved himself. So
interesting. It's fun talking about that, especially as a sports geek. You know, typical sports fans don't get to see much about the business side. And I think the media now, the ESPNs of the world, the Schefters and all of that, who are reporting to Diana Rossini, you know, they dive into the weeds a little bit more with that stuff. And so we know a little bit more. Been back when I was a kid, you're watching sports. So it's fascinating for me to learn all about that.
Well, and back to your original question, I think Goodell, I think he deserves it. I mean, what? Well,
I'm glad you brought some clarity to that.
The amount of money that the owners make, and in return, the players are making now. You know, basically now, you know, the top end quarterbacks are making, you know, $45-50 million a year. And if you're, you know, my wife brought up the Jimmy Garoppolo contract that he just signed with the Raiders. And I think it was like 3 years. 67 million, something along those lines. And she's like, I can't believe he's going to make, you know, 23 million. I'm like, yeah, but that's like 25th or 20th in the league in terms of ranks. Right. I mean, that's how the contracts and things have gone now. It's crazy.
Well, the way you broke that down too. How many teams? 32.
Right.
So, and he's 50 million, Goodell.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's less than 2 million a team, right?
Right.
So, I mean, if you think about it,
that's what each owner is paying. Yeah.
I mean, really.
Right.
So that's crazy.
Well, I appreciate the insight because
and the values of those teams. I mean,
sure.
I think every team in the league now is valued over $1 billion, which was definitely not the case.
You sound like that you have a pretty good relationship with Roger. Is that fair to say?
I have, when I see him, we're friendly. We say hi, how's it going? That kind of thing. It really kind of started once again, as a current player, I would always, if the commissioner's around, it's like if the commissioner's around, you go introduce yourself and a face and name and that kind of thing. Fortunately, at that point in time, I was a starter. Paul Tagliabue was like, I don't know who this guy, I have no idea who this guy is that's coming up and talking to me. Roger Goodell, I was a starter and playing well. And so I think there was some back and forth. Well, then to take that relationship a step further, when I had the concussion in 2006 with Kansas City, when I had another concussion in 2007 with Miami, how that was all handled by the teams, the new collective bargain agreement that went into effect, I want to say that was like 2010 to 2012. I was out of the league by that time, so I don't remember the dates exactly. When they went through that whole thing and how they were changing the concussion protocols, how teams were going to handle it, how independent doctors were going to handle it, all those things. I had multiple conversations with Roger at that point in time, how the Chiefs handled it, how they handled my health, how they handled the internally with the team doctors, how they handled it externally with the neurosurgeons, neurologists, and neuropsychologists. I have to make sure I get all three of those in.
Yeah, right.
So I had those conversations with him about how the Chiefs handled things, about how the Dolphins handled things, what the differences were, the outside opinions that I got. So we had multiple conversations about that and whether or not that had an impact, but a lot of the protocols now are what the Chiefs did. The Chiefs were way ahead of themselves. And I've told Carl this face-to-face, Carl Peterson. I've told him face-to-face. I've told, I said, the way you guys handle it, I can't thank you enough, because the way the protocols were at the time in 2006, I passed all the NFL protocols within 3 weeks. I could have played within 3 weeks based on the protocols that were in place.
Okay.
They made me sit out 8 weeks. I wasn't able to, and I was, as a competitor.
They made you sit out because it was the direction of the doctors. They were taking
the neurosurgeon here in town. And I thank him. I've thanked him since. I said, because I was mad at everybody.
I was going to say at the time, though, in the moment,
you're a competitor.
I've passed everything.
Yes.
Let me play. Right?
Yeah, I was. Yeah. Yes, I would like to say I stayed calm and collected, but I did not. I was yelling at people weekly. To the point where I was cleared to play, yet they weren't even letting me walk on a treadmill. They're like, we don't want you to get an accelerated heart rate. We don't want you to get, we don't.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, no, you don't understand. I'm coming back and playing at some point in time. I've got to get myself in shape. They're like, well, not this week, you're not. And it was just, but now that we know more about it, we know more about concussions. We know more about multiple concussions. We know there's just a lot more information. So at the time, I was mad as a competitor, but now I'm thankful they handled it the way they did.
So kind of two-part question, because I want to get to Tua and what he went through this past season, but you talked about we have so much more information as it regards the concussions. We kind of had to learn the hard way. Isn't that fair to say? Because it sounds like Roger was proactively trying to find a new protocol to protect these players.
Right.
Because and the first name that comes to mind is Junior Seau.
Right.
It's pretty much known fact that because of all the concussions that he went through, it affected him so much mentally that he eventually took his own life.
Right.
Do you think that is what sparked Roger to be more proactive, the league as a whole to be more proactive, to find, okay, there's something to this concussion thing. We got to dive in a little deeper.
Well, and it wasn't just Junior. There's multiple players.
Sure. I'm just, like I said, he's the first one that came to mind.
Well, he's the first one, and he's the biggest name.
Biggest name, yeah.
Everybody knows Junior Seau. I was a teammate with him my rookie year in
right.
93 with the Chargers. Big, huge personality.
Yeah.
Like, walked in the locker room. Here I was, an 8th round pick, 3rd to last pick. I was just happy to be there.
Right.
He came up, gave me a handshake, a hug, hey, welcome to the team. I was like, this guy's on the cover of Sports Illustrated. He's Mr. Everything. He's all pro everything. And, he's taking the time to just come welcome me and just, and he was always that way. His personality was bigger than life. And he brought energy to the room. And I never, in my entire career, this is my rookie year, I never saw anyone practice any harder than Junior Seau. And they would hold him out of practice because they knew he was going to practice like he played in the game. And that's a lot of why he was as good as he was, and why his longevity was there, and the work ethic and all the different things. But to your point, that was one of the many stories. Now, there's still so much unknown about the brain and about concussions, about post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, anxiety, all those things that go into concussions and are accelerated because of concussions and what goes on in the brain. So I got to be a little bit careful not to speak out of turn here, because literally every single day that information is changing.
Sure.
And that's what I learned with my whole experience was, the information we had at the time, that's why I was mad they weren't letting me come back and play. The information we have now, that's why I've gone around and thanked all those people on both organizations.
Right. So they kind of had, sounds like they had doctors who were not doing the norm, and maybe really did know more than the average.
Well, and I think that's why there was such an issue with the league. There was a group of doctors that were supposed to be all over it, and there was maybe some outside information that, you thought it was there, but it hadn't been proven yet. So you got to, from a lawyer or law standpoint, you got to be careful how you handle. There was a lot of unknowns, and there still are a lot of unknowns about the brain. And so I think there's a number of different things that go into the post-concussion issues, post-career issues. I don't want to speak specifically about Junior or any of the other players' experiences. I've had a number of former teammates that have had concussions, and so for me in my career, people ask me this all the time: how many concussions do you have in your career? And I said, well, if you look at my medical file, which is probably like that thick, in that entire thing, I've only 2. Well, the reason I know I had 2 is because I was knocked unconscious twice. Yeah. So it's like those are automatically concussions. Now the way, there's different grades of concussions. If you hit your head off the turf, or you hit your head and all of a sudden you see stars, and then you shake it off, and like 10 seconds later, well, we used to joke in the huddle about that. But like, oh man, I got blown up on that one. It's
rang your bell.
Now that's considered a concussion. So, there are different levels, different numbers. I don't want to put a number on how many I had, but I know there were plenty of times where, because the old AstroTurf, you'd bounce your head off of that.
Probably even going back to college, I would imagine too, right?
Yeah. So, there's a lot that goes into, the concussion part of it, the mental health part of it. When guys get done playing, there's the concussion part of it, but there's also that now you've got to do something different. You got to find another job. You got to, so there's a lot of factors that go into it other than just the amount of hits.
Yeah. How long did you have in between being done playing and then moving into the television work?
So I was fortunate. I probably handled it incorrectly based on the amount of money that I was being paid at the time. So I got done. Let's see, my last season was 2008. I decided in the spring of 2009 that I was done. My oldest was about to start high school. My wife and I were always, Julie and I were in agreement that wherever we were when the boys, our oldest, or when our son started high school, we were staying. We weren't going to do the change the high school thing.
Sure, yeah.
So because we knew that was kind of a formative, for lots of different reasons. And so I decided in 2009, I had some opportunities to go other places and be that veteran backup, and I probably could have done that for another 2-3 years. We've always lived together, no matter where, my wife and I and all of our kids. At one point, it was just one, and then it was 2 kids.
Yep.
Our first was born in Washington. Our second was born in St. Louis. Our third was born, in Kansas City. And so we always moved together. That was an important part for us as a family. A lot of guys, there are many guys that do it differently. Their families stay in one spot. They go get a condo during the season. They kind of go back and forth. That just didn't work or wasn't going to work for us. So I didn't want to, that 2009, I didn't want to, be the, and move.
Yeah.
And so there were multiple things. One, I didn't want to bounce around. 2, I'd finally got through the 2008 season healthy after having the concussion in 06, the concussion in 07.
Right.
08, I got through it healthy. I was picking my own time to retire, which is a tough thing for any athlete.
Right.
If you get the opportunity to say, I'm done, Not many people get that opportunity. So I was like, this is pretty cool. I get to decide. So that was part of it, the family part of it, you know. So anyway, that's how. So to get to your question about broadcasting, I didn't hire an agent. I had enough meetings and production meetings and had met different people over the years that I had all their different business cards. I had done some stuff with ESPN for the draft while I was here in Kansas City. I had done some stuff with CBS during our bye weeks, being on the NFL Today. I had done some sideline reporting for NFL Network for the playoffs my last couple years. They'd bring in like former players or current players.
You've done some pregame or preseason stuff too, locally, right?
Well, that was after I.
Oh, that was after. Okay.
Yep. So getting an idea, I was like, okay, I don't know if I want to do studio stuff. I don't know if I want to do radio. I don't know if I want to do games. I didn't really know. So I just made a call to all these different people. So I signed with NFL Network to do studio stuff with their Total Access. I signed with Fox they hired me to do 6 or 7 games. I did that for a while. Ended up, I didn't like traveling that much. I was gone a lot because during the week I do NFL Network. Then on the weekends I was going to do games, and my wife was like, "Wait a second,
I thought we were going to be together.
I thought we were retiring here." And she's like, "You're gone more," which was true. I was, you know,
gone more than
I would take that 5 a.m. flight to Dallas. And then connect to LA, be there in time to do the show on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Wow.
Then some weeks I'd come home, and some weeks I'd go right from LA to wherever my game was for Fox, do the game for Fox, come home Sunday. You know, it was like, it was, but I didn't, you know, I talked about the mental health part of it. I didn't know what that next transition was. I knew I couldn't just do nothing.
Right.
So I didn't know what I wanted to do. So after the first year, I didn't do games for Fox anymore. I just did NFL Network. Then it got to the point where it's like, okay, we're out in LA all the time. My wife's like, let's move to LA. I was like, well, I really don't want to raise a family in LA. Nothing against LA. You know, people raise out there.
Let's just be, we get it.
It's just, you know, that wasn't for us.
Right.
My wife and I are both Midwesterners who raised our kid, you know, so I was like, okay. So at that same time, Westwood One Radio was, the NFL was starting up Thursday night games on a consistent basis. So Westwood One offered me the Thursday night games, which that first season was only like 6 or 7 games, and then 10 games, and then 12 games, and then, you know, it gradually worked up. So I dropped the NFL Network thing, went over to radio, and just did Thursday night games for 4 seasons, and then Dan Deerdorf retired, and my play-by-play guy all 4 years with Westwood One was Ian Eagle, who's now, you know, one of the best in the business, was one of the best in the business.
We're going to get to that because I personally feel like Kevin Harlan should be the guy who replaces Jim Nantz. I'm just saying, you guys do such a great job together, you and Kevin. And Kevin, my gosh, that call he did on when FDU beat Purdue.
Oh, yes.
Are we seeing what we think we're seeing right now? I mean, he is incredible. I know Ian is great, but I'm a homer for Harlan.
Yeah, and I've worked with Kevin for 3 years. So my point of bringing up Ian was that he kept telling CBS, hey, this guy's pretty good. Maybe you can get, you know, and I was like, I'm like, my kids' ages, I'm good. I'm, you know, my sons are playing on Friday nights in high school. I don't want to, you know, and so anyway, Dan Deerdorf ended up retiring from CBS, and Ian was like, well, I'm telling him. So they brought me in for an interview, and I said, well, this is what I've kind of got to juggle, you know, and so anyway, we worked it out. I've had 9 great seasons at CBS.
Wow.
It's crazy that it's already been 9 years.
I know.
Isn't that crazy?
So then
14 years in broadcasting, but 9 years at CBS. So I had 6 years with Greg Gumbel, and now the last 3 with Kevin. And I have nothing but great things to say about Ian, about Greg, about Kevin. I mean, talk about pros. These guys have covered everything. I mean, NBA, you know, the Olympics, like, you know, Greg Gumbel, I mean, he covered Olympics, he covered World Series, he's covered Super Bowls. He's, you know, Kevin's done 20 plus, 25 plus Super Bowls for Westwood One. Yep. He's been the voice of Westwood One football for a long time. Ian, you know, he's going to be the guy that moves into Jim Nantz's seat after this year's Final Four, getting an opportunity. So I got no complaints about the people that I've had the opportunity to work with.
Does how do I ask this question? Sometimes I get to this point where I want to ask a somewhat controversial question. And I feel a little guilty asking it.
Right.
You obviously have a great relationship with Kevin. I'm a homer because I'm a Kansas City guy.
Yes.
Kevin's a Kansas City guy. But Kevin is so good. Like, you ever have personal conversations with Kevin that was a spot that he's shooting for, or does he have his own vision on where he wants to go? Or do we just need to wait till you help us get Kevin on this podcast to ask that question to him directly?
You know, I haven't had those personal in-depth. I think Kevin is enjoying what Kevin's doing. He loves the fact, you know, I give him a hard time. I give Ian a hard time. They do so much, right? It's like, so Kevin will do our games. He'll do when the NBA gets going, right? He'll do an NBA game on Thursday. Then he goes home for a day. Friday, because those games are late, so he'll go home Friday. Then he's home for a day, and then Saturday he's got to fly to wherever our game is. Then he does our game on Sunday. If he can get out Sunday night, then he goes to wherever the Monday night game is, because he does. So on Thursday he's doing TNT for the NBA on TV. Then he does Sunday for us at CBS. Then on Monday he's doing the Monday night game for Westwood One, and those are always night games. So he doesn't get home till Tuesday. Then he's home a day. Wednesday he's flying. You know, it's
wow.
But he loves. I mean, he has such a passion.
You
for
can
it,
tell when you listen to him.
He's so good at it.
So good.
And the amazing thing, and I've shared this before, and I'm not like giving an inside secret. He doesn't use a spotter. So most play-by-play guys have a spotter that's in there kind of pointing out names and numbers and, you know, kind of helping him, you know, that tackle was by, number 35, you know, Atkinson or whatever. Or it's like,
sure.
He doesn't use that. So that makes it even more amazing that he's doing 3 games within about 5 days with different rosters, different sports. He has this stat guy up there, which all the play-by-play guys do. But, you know, it's phenomenal, the work that he puts in, and he just has an unbelievable passion. So to answer your question, I don't know. I think he's just appreciative of
the opportunity.
Yeah. You know, he's the voice of the NBA. He's on with the video game, the Y2K, NBA 2K or whatever it's called now. So he's the voice on that. He does all the NBA stuff. He'll do that all the way through the playoffs. He'll do NCAA tournament. He's doing that for CBS. They use him some for that. The NFL, the Westwood One, like I said, he's done 20 plus, 25 plus, however many Super Bowls. I think he's just loving doing what he's doing. So, I mean, I think I think I want that gig for him more than he wants that gig for him. And I think he's very similar in that he's just appreciative of the opportunity, appreciative of
which is the right mindset to
appreciative of working. He's going to give it 110%, and all that energy we saw in the NCAA tournament game with FDU, he gives all of that, whether it's 5 people listening or 55 million people listening at the Super Bowl or so. I mean, it's just that's who he is and how he prepares, and so I think he's just thankful for all of it. Sure. And would he love to have those opportunities and do some of the other stuff? I'm sure he would. That would it'd be crazy to think that he wouldn't. But I think he's just in the moment and appreciative for everything that he's been able to do. And once again, I'm not trying to speak for him. That's just what I
what it would seem. Yeah.
So how does Ian get picked before Kevin? What is there a hierarchy, time spent with the company? How does that, do you know?
I don't know how that's done. I know Ian is he's the number 2 guy for NFL. Kevin and I are the 3rd crew. Ian and Charles Davis are the 2 crew, and then Nance and Romo are the 1 crew. When it comes to basketball, I know Nance has been the 1 guy, and Ian's been the 2 guy. Kevin has been the 3 guy, and I think the main reason that Kevin's the 3 guy for college basketball is because he's got all these other commitments with the NBA. That's my guess.
It makes total sense.
That's just my guess. And by the way, Ian is incredibly good.
No, he is. Yes, I'm sorry if I don't want to speak disparagingly against him. I just really.
I'm just saying I don't know what goes into how they decide all that stuff.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, so I wanted to ask this to get back on the concussion stuff here for just a second. You talked about the mental health side. I guess it kind of parlays into the broadcasting stuff because you mentioned how important it was for you to stay active and figure out what your career was going to be post-football to keep yourself mentally healthy, right? Was that something that you learned from others, through others who kind of experienced it the hard way, that you saw the road that they went and they were in a bad spot and you were like, I don't want to go down that road. I really kind of need to be proactive in figuring what my transition looks like.
Well, I think for me, a lot of it was, I just know my personality. I don't do well just sitting around,
Right.
We, with family vacations, my wife is content getting a break and sitting on the beach and reading a book. And I can do that for maybe 30 minutes. And then I'm like, hey, kids, you want to go build a sandcastle? Hey, kids, you want to go out in the water? Hey, kids, let's throw the football around. It's like, hey, let's go on a bike. Oh, wait, you're going on a bike? I want to go on a bike ride. It's like, and I give her credit because she helps me balance that side of it. Sometimes I have these big projects and all this stuff I want to do. And she's like, hey, just,
chill out a second.
Yeah. But
Take a minute.
she knew that I needed to find something, whatever that was. So, so when I said, hey, give me a couple years to figure this out, whether it's like I told you earlier, it's like, is it TV? Is it radio? Is it play-by-play? Is it in the booth? Is it, in a studio? What is it that, that I'll transition into and have some success and be able to do it long term for however long that may be. So a lot of it was knowing that. Was it specifically because I saw other players struggling with it,
or did you?
No, I knew, and that's why I've had these conversations with former teammates, especially within those first couple years when they're done. Hey, you need to find something.
Yeah.
It's not like, we're kind of, from a professional football standpoint, you're used to schedules. You're used to, in the old days before now the CBA, they can't be at the facility. They can't, there's certain times they can be in the building and can't be in the building. I get that. That wasn't my world. It was, okay, February, I'm going to start showing up at the training facility and start working out, getting ready for the next season.
Yeah.
And I kind of had my routine. Okay, this time of the year, this is where I'll be. This time of the year, this is where I'll be. Okay, we hit a mini camp, an OTA, all those things. Your schedule. Well, when you're done, there is none of that.
Right.
And that's
not
why
as much structure.
Not as much structure, not as much routine. And so I had those hard conversations with multiple teammates about finding that. And everybody's got to take that journey on their own.
Right.
They've got to go
But
through
not
that.
everybody can go get into broadcasting.
Correct.
Because there are only so many spots. If you figure how many guys
Yes.
in any given season, that's their last season.
Right.
Well, there aren't that many spots to do whatever the next thing is.
And that's why I'm appreciative of it.
Yeah.
And that's why, and like, again, I should have used an agent, but I didn't because I was just like, I don't know. I'm just going to call
You used
all
an
these guys.
agent through your entire professional football career. You didn't think that you needed one for this?
Because I didn't want to get tied to a contract and all of a sudden say, hey, I don't like this.
Because you didn't know what you.
I didn't know what I want.
That's fair.
I didn't know what. So
That
I
makes
did
sense.
it. And
so
then,
did you ever get one?
Oh no, I have one now.
Oh, you have one now.
Yeah.
Okay,
After,
good.
Literally, so after the first year, I was like, oh, I need a contract because
I don't want to read this contract. What does this mean?
I'm being woefully underpaid right now.
Right.
It's like, so it's I've had an agent ever since, and
So was coaching something you ever thought you wanted to
for
do,
a
or no?
long time.
Because you never mentioned that. You said I didn't know if I wanted to do radio or like it seemed like broadcasting was at least the goal.
So early in my career, as I said, I was only with the Chargers 1 year, got cut in training camp the second year, was out of football, went to Canada for like 2 weeks, then 2 weeks not on the roster, 2 weeks on the roster, then I got cut there. I mean, it was just so, and then when I was with Washington, I was the third, my first year, second year, third year, went to camp my fourth year as the third, and then ended up starting 14 games that year. So the first large chunk of my career, I was like, okay, I like football. I like I was the guy in the headsets. I was the guy signaling the plays in back when they didn't have the coach to quarterback, headset. There was always signals that had to do it. So I enjoyed the game plan. I enjoyed all that stuff. So I was like, oh, this is what I'm going to do. And then when I played, I was like, oh, I really enjoy it.
Yeah,
Enjoy this part of it.
When I actually get to do it.
And then as I said, fortunate to play a long time, start a lot of games, make some money. And one of the things I've talked with Coach Vermeil about, I talked with Al Saunders about it, talked with Mike Martz about it, talked with Norv Turner about it. I mean, all the different coaches that I've Cam Cameron. I mean, all the guys I have a ton of respect for and was with for a long time. I know all the good stuff. I would say this to all of them. I know all the good stuff, right? I know this. You're in the the camaraderie of the locker room and the meeting rooms and the game day and all. I know all the good stuff. What's the one thing that that you don't like about the job? And every single one of them said you miss a lot of family time because it's a huge commitment, right? It's a huge commitment, and it's, Coach Vermeil coined the phrase, burnout when he left the Philadelphia Eagles and went into broadcasting because he was like, he would just grind. He'd sleep at nights at the offices and some of that's changed and some of that hasn't changed in the NFL. But I was like, okay, I was at the point where my kids were. I just didn't. There were certain things. Believe me, I as I've said, I was blessed to have the opportunity to jump into broadcasting because I knew it would let me scratch my football itch. Yep. But then give me the time to be the dad I wanted to be, the husband I wanted to be, and all those kinds of things. So
wow,
I love that.
Yeah, I remember hearing you in other interviews talk about how being that guy on the sideline as the third string quarterback and having the headsets and even being the person who manufactured the signal calls to help you have retention. I made up all the
play. Yeah, that's called job security. Yes,
exactly.
Yes, I made up the signal.
Well, they can't get rid of me because I know all the signals.
Be invaluable.
That's what I learned after I got cut my first year. I was like, okay, I got to do. So I signed with Washington. I remember that, I was the third. Like I said, I was the third for 4 years until that fourth season. I was the guy, and so by that point, I was 28. My fourth year, that would have been the 98 season. And I was still the guy in team meetings that would jump up and get the light switches. I was the guy, hey, I could tell you Norv Turner likes jalapeno bagels for breakfast. So I would get him jalapeno bagels at least one day a week. Right. Guys are like, Trent, man, why are you jumping up and turning off the lights? You're like 27, 26, whatever. Yeah. I'm like, no. If I turn out, they're not going to get rid of me because I'm the first one up there to turn the light.
Yeah.
It's like, so
if the broadcasting thing doesn't work out, you'll be really good in outside sales because you just know how to butter everybody up.
Like, man, I was like, I'm not going to give him any excuse because when the Chargers cut me and I had a tear jerk moment with Bobby Ross as he's cutting me, they had kind of laid the parameters of what they were looking for. And I checked all those boxes and I said, Coach, I was the number one guy. Like if you look at the off-season workouts, I was here more than anybody else. Yeah. The testing that you put us through, I rated out higher than anybody else, higher than Junior that year, which was I couldn't believe I did. But so there was all these things. I'm like, how I did everything you did. Now you're cutting me. And of course I'm like, so like an idiot, right? And he's like, well, we're just going to try this different direction. We're going to try, and I'm just like, so when I was out of football, and I hate to say this, but I'm sitting there, and this was back before DirecTV and all that stuff. So I would go to a little sports bar in Bloomington, Indiana, because it's a lot cheaper living in Bloomington, Indiana than it was San Diego, California. Well, and had no job. And so my wife and we had just been married. So we moved back there. And I would go on Sundays to the sports bar just, and I hate to say it, but you're like, okay, did somebody get hurt this weekend? Because then I'm going to call that team and say, hey, can I come try out? Can I come get and so it, you, as you're going through all that, you're like, okay, if I get back in the league, I'm going to give them no excuse to get rid of me. And so I would just like spend, when Washington signed me, I would just be there all day in the offseason. I'd show up and the strength coaches are like, you got to like take it. You got to like rest. You got to take a break. And I'm like, well, I'm going to be here every day. So we ended up making a racquetball league in the facility. They had racquetball courts. And I was like, well, I'm going to be here every day. So if you're not going to let me lift, we got to do something. So there was a half court basketball.
Wow.
So we started a 3-on-3 basketball, and then we started a racquetball league. And I was
back when they would let you play basketball.
They let us do all that stuff. And I was like, well, I'm going to be here. So, and then I'd do that. And then I would go watch tape to try and, just learn the offense as best I could. And back then, it was all VHS tape. And Norv Turner had this wall of tapes, and I've told this story, and Norv's heard this story, and so I'm not revealing anything, too bad here. But he had this wall of tapes because he was the offensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys when they won the Super Bowl, and Troy Aikman and Emmitt Smith and Michael Irvin and on down the line. So I would wait until he would go home, and then I would go in his office and I would take like 3 or 4 tapes at a time for the different, so if I wanted to look at, flank right motion, scat right 364 F flat swing, there'd be a tape of all those with Troy Aikman and Jay Novacek and Daryl Johnston and Emmett, and all those guys. So I'd take the scat 364 F flats look, the 839 F flat swing, the 844, Ricky, I would take like 3 or 4 and I would go down to the video guys. I was like, okay, Norv's not here. I'll pay you guys some money.
Right.
I need you to put these 3 or 4 tapes onto one tape. And I did that over the course of the off season, and I went through his whole wall of. So I went through all the different concepts, so I could watch it at home.
Would that be frowned upon?
Stealing from the head coach, yeah, that would be frowned upon.
I guess it is stealing, but you're doing it with good intent.
Yes,
right?
but now everything's on iPads or computers or tablets or whatever they. So everything's in the air. So my kids, fast forward to my boys being in college, I was like, "How do you guys study tape?" And they're like, "Oh, it's just all downloaded in the cloud." And I just go to, and they'd sit there and they'd show me their tablets or laptops, and they'd be like, "What do you want to watch?" And I'd be like, "Let's watch 3rd and 3 inside the 20 in the 4th quarter and see what the defense is." And they just go tap, 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 boop.
Wow.
I'd be like, you're like, that was expensive for me.
Gosh. I was like, you don't know how many hours that took for me to do that.
Time consuming, costly.
So anyway, I would have all those videos at home. So then I'd watch tape at the facility. Then I would be able to watch tape at night. So I was like, those years in Washington, I was like, okay, I didn't want any reason for them to cut me. And if they cut me, it was just because I couldn't play. And I knew I could play.
Sure.
Yeah.
It was just a matter of taking care of the mental and the physical and all that stuff and getting an opportunity. There's a lot of guys, and I've told this, there's a lot of guys that can play that never get the opportunity. And it's just it's
timing.
What their path
gotta be
was,
at the right place at the right time. But I will say this, based on what I'm hearing,
and you have to make the most of it when you get that opportunity.
But hard work also pays off, and I think that's the underlining message here. That anybody who listens to this is that it could have just as easily not worked out for you, but you put in the time, you put in the work, and you were blessed with that eventually at some point. You just had to be patient and persistent.
And I didn't want. So when I got cut in San Diego, and my wife and I, we decided to move back to Indiana. And at that point in time, I had my degree in business. She had her degree in education. I said, listen, we're married. I mean, we have to make this as a decision as a team.
Yeah.
Do we move on? Do you get it? She was a high school teacher. She was certified secondary education. I said, do you become a high school teacher and I become a salesman or marketing or whatever it is in business world, and we just move on and live our lives? She knew I wanted to keep trying to play.
Sure.
I knew I wanted to keep trying to play, but it was a group decision, team decision. And we came to the conclusion, you know what? So you don't have that what if moment or I wish I would have or any of that. She's like, you know what? Try this off-season, this season, and see if you can get into another camp. And then if you give it another shot and you don't make it, at least you can say you gave it another. You did all you could do.
Yeah.
It just didn't work out. Like you said, the opportunity, the timing, whatever it may be.
Sure.
So I just made sure there was nothing I didn't do.
Kudos to you, man.
I made sure that
it could have you could have had a pity party, and you didn't, and you were proactively. Well,
believe me, there was.
Well, everybody does, but you turned it negative into a positive.
Yes. So, and I don't know if I've ever told this publicly, but
sweet.
So when I got
on the Papa Ron podcast,
when I got cut in. None of us saw it coming. My wife and I, we didn't see it coming. My in-laws and my sister-in-law, my wife's younger sister, they were in town because we were all at the preseason game. They came to watch me play. Being Midwesterners living in San Diego, people want to come out and visit.
Sure.
So they all came out for the game. Well, that next day on Sunday, they wanted to go do stuff. And I was like, listen, I just want to sit on the couch and veg. And I've been in training camp. I'm just going to relax. So they did this like full day SeaWorld, whatever, all day kind of thing. And so they come walking back in and not I mean, they didn't know. I mean, there wasn't like cell phones. There wasn't like any of that. They had no. So in the meantime, while they were gone, I'd gotten called, went in, had this tear jerk moment with Bobby Ross. I'm home, just like melting down. They come walking in and like, oh, and I'm laying on the couch. I'm like, okay, how do I tell them this?
Yeah.
And so of course my sister-in-law, the younger sister of my wife, she's like, oh, so, what have you been up to today? What time do you have practice tomorrow? Or something like that. Just making conversation. Right?
Yeah.
Sure.
And I go, yeah, I don't have practice tomorrow. And Julie's like, what? And I go, yeah, I got cut. And it should have just
Did they think you were joking? Like, did they think it was like you were pranking them, or did they?
Well, at first they were like, what? And then they saw my face.
Your face told it.
And then my in-laws and my sister-in-law, they like quietly walked out. And this is a 2-bedroom apartment. Yeah. So there's
not very far to go.
There's not a whole lot of place to go. It only took about 10 feet to get to another room. And so then, I was just like, so what did we do the next day? We went to LA and went to Disneyland.
Okay.
So they're like, if you get cut, we're going to the happiest place on earth.
I was going to say, it's like when you win the Super Bowl. When you get cut, what's the first thing you're going to do?
So I've never told anybody that. We went to Disneyland the next day, and I still thought about it all day. But it was a good distraction to go, do something different after being cut.
Heartbroken.
Yeah. All right. So
I know we're
so
almost
much
out
to
of
cover.
time.
We're almost out of time.
Are we almost out of time?
Well, I mean,
we got, based on my timer, we've got 10 minutes left.
10 minutes. All right.
Do you ever get, do fans ever mistaken you for Gus Frerotte?
Oh yeah. I mean,
do people ever come say, "Oh, Trent Green, you're the guy who headbutted the wall"?
Yes. Well, there are people that say that, and then there's people that say, "Oh, you're the guy that got a chance because the guy headbutted the wall." And I was like, well, no, when he headbutted the wall, Jeff Hostetler went in. That was in the 97 season. Yeah. So Hostetler went in. I said, I didn't start playing until 98, but I said I was on the team and I was part of that conversation with what did he just do? And it was like, well, he headbutted the wall.
Yeah.
I'm like I said, I was kind of the coach at that time as the third quarterback. And, our routine was when the series ended, I would go get the pictures because it used to not be on a tablet. You'd go get the pictures. You come in. Norv and I would talk about it. Then we'd go get Gus and we'd discuss it. And, Norv and I look at the pictures, and then Norv's like, hey, go get Gus. And I went to get him and I came back and I was like, evidently he headbutted the wall and the doctors and I won't tell you what he said, but he was not happy about that.
Well, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So I will admit that for years back, I mean, not recently, but for years back in the day, because there was this carousel of quarterbacks that was playing in Washington at that time. You had yourself, you had Frerotte, you had Hostetler, you had Schuler. There might have been one other guy in that mix of all of that.
Brad Johnson came after. He came after me. Yeah.
Yeah. So like for whatever reason,
year before John Freeze, who was with in San Diego. Yeah, there was a lot there. Yeah, there were a lot.
And so for a long time, I confused for you being the guy who headbutted the wall.
Oh, all right.
Until you got to Kansas City, and I was like, oh, it was the other guy who did that. Yeah. So
then that would be 3 concussions. If I had been
exactly.
Only 3.
Yes.
I remember saying, and gosh, there's so much to get to, and I know you probably have some. Was there anybody?
I just want to ask about kids. That's all.
Okay, well, give me a second to get through this then. Gus and Norv didn't have a very good relationship based on interviews that I've seen. Did you have a pretty good relationship with Norv?
Oh, a great relationship with Norv. The only thing that I've been critical with him and told him is I said, you should have picked me as a starter way before you did. I go, I was on your team for 4 years. It took you, it's like, but Schuler was a 1st-round pick. Frerotte had a lot of success and signed, and, he and Gus had a difference of opinion. Once Gus signed the bigger contract to become the starter, and they traded Heath away, that's when those two started getting into it a little bit. But I have a great I think the world of Norv. I thank him. I've thanked him multiple times over the years when I've seen him. The mental part of football, I give a lot of credit to Norv, to Cam Cameron, who was my quarterback coach for 2 years in Washington. And then Mike Martz came in, was my quarterback coach for my last 2 years in Washington before he and I left and went to the Rams.
Yeah.
Those guys really taught me more about the mental part of football, how to game plan, how to study defenses, because like I said, I was kind of in a coach mode at that point in time. So I spent a lot of time in the meeting rooms having discussions with those three guys. So yeah, I think the world of Norv. I have a great relationship with him. Yeah.
Well, because we got to fast forward through all the things I want to talk about. Eventually you end up in St. Louis, and so I'm going to play a couple clips for you, and I want to get your reaction to this. Okay. This is where this is going.
I'll take a drink of water since I'm drinking.
Yeah, go ahead, take a drink of water. Mm-hmm. You have a very, very, very close relationship with Dick Vermeil, and so this is the clip I'm going to show where you actually get injured in the preseason game by Rodney Harrison, and then you see the raw emotion of Dick Vermeil talking about you being hurt and out for the year.
Trent Green comes in here, the real hope for this offense. We've been talking about him all game and all preseason.
After a strong start to the preseason, Vermeil's ability to inspire was put to the test.
Now we got Trent Green down. We've got Trent Green down in the middle of the field.
Players were devastated when he got hurt. A lot of their hopes went with him.
You get emotional, it hurts, but that's what this business is all about.
That was one of the most impacting coaching reactions I have ever seen in my 35 years in the National Football League.
We are not going to use Trent Green as an excuse for losing. We will rally around Kurt Warner, and we'll play good football.
All right. So what is your initial, you've seen that probably hundreds of times, and you've had several conversations with Dick since then about that moment. But when you see that and it's fresh on your heart, what's your reaction?
Well, I think the thing that comes to mind, you guys saw it on that clip. Thank you so much for showing it again.
Well, I wasn't wanting to show necessarily you getting hurt. What I'm trying to show is how much Dick Vermeil loves you.
I even said something to Kurt. Because the American Underdog, his movie, that came out, they did all the actors doing everything. But if you remember, that scene of the movie was the actual clip of me getting hit.
Oh, really?
I was like, wait, Kurt, come on, man. I was like, you couldn't find an actor that wanted to have his knee dove into.
Right, exactly.
So, but it's all good.
Yeah.
The thing I think of there is my reaction. When it happened, you saw me rolling around on the ground. You saw me kind of take my helmet off and throw it to the side. And then when I rolled back over, I put my hands on my face. And people asked, what was going on in that moment? And I said, well, what was going on is really kind of weird because instead of, cussing like crazy and screaming and yelling and, I didn't yell at all. I rolled around because I was in pain. I was in pain, but once I took the helmet off, I just put my hands on my face. And really what was going through in that moment was I've been through so much to get to this point. And I knew I was done. I mean, all the stuff that people had told me over the years about, oh, you feel the crunch, you feel the pop, you feel the tear, you feel the burning sensation. I felt all of those. So I was like, I don't know what all's wrong in there, but I messed up a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And so it was really more reflecting back on, this is not going to be how this ends. I just was like, even in that moment, I was like, this is not the end of it. It took me, it'd be the 1 year in San Diego, the 1 year out in Canada and in Indiana, and then the 4 years in Washington. So 6 years it took me to have my own team, like to be a starter and to be signed to a team and like, hey, you're going to lead them in the offseason. And during that whole time, I had kind of formulated a plan for how I wanted to lead, how I wanted to be a part of the offseason, how I wanted to communicate with players. I just sat back and listened. I had, as you said, I had Heath and Gus, two younger guys. I had Jeff Hostetler, who was a guy that had won a Super Bowl and been a big free agent guy. And, so I had all these people, all these resources, Stan Humphries and John Freeze when my rookie year in San Diego. I mean, all these experiences I'd gone through. So I had a plan in place, and that plan was working up until that point. Because when I signed with St. Louis, we moved right away. I was there every day, all day. So before, when I was in Washington, I was there all day, every day, stealing tapes and trying to do playing racquetball and doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
This was me trying to cultivate relationships.
Yeah, and leading.
I would play cards with the offensive linemen while we're in there playing cards. Like we get done with workouts, and I'd be like, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" "Well, we're going in here to play cards. Can I jump in?" And I'd sit there and I'd play cards with the starting offensive line, and I'd say, you guys can ask me anything. I've been in this offense for, my whole career, and it's new to St. Louis. So we would talk protections. We would talk, hey, what's Martz's philosophy? Well, and it wasn't all football. We'd talk family stuff and all that other stuff.
But you're building rapport.
But I just building those relationships. And whether it be with the offensive guys, defensive guys, receivers, whatever that may be, that was an important part of it and something I had learned. So when that happened on the field, and so that's what I think of, is at that moment, I still was like, this isn't it. This cannot be how this ends, and I won't let this define me, because I didn't want to be, the Wally Pipp story, right? Everybody knows the Wally Pipp story from baseball, and I had a college coach that always used to bring up Wally Pipp anytime you get injured. Oh, you injured your ankle, okay? Well, we'll never hear from you again. It's just you're going to disappear, and so. And he did that with every player, not just me. I mean, it was just though, that was Well, I mean, that was the motivation to not go to the training room. Don't be the guy that's always in the training room.
Okay,
it was kind of a motivation thing that they used. And so I just remember that all that. I'm like, this is not going to be what defines me.
I'm glad you were right.
Yeah, really. Yeah. The emotion that you feel though when you see Dick Vermeil so heartbroken over your injury.
He and I have, I knew him, but I didn't know him all that well. We had only been together, a handful of months. I knew I wanted to play for him during the free agency visit. I'll make this a really short story because I know we're going long. During the free agency visit, the first night we were supposed to have dinner, he got in a car accident on the way. He was late to dinner. Oh. And none of us, all the other nobody knew where he was, and ends up he comes walking in late. He doesn't have a sport coat on because his sport coat had all been ripped up from the glass. And he walks in, they get him a sport coat. We have the dinner. We're sitting there, after we get done, they're doing coffee and desserts and that kind of thing. He rolls up his sleeve and starts like putting little shards of glass in like a little dish at the table.
And you had no idea.
Well, we knew he got in an accident because he was late.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
And he's never late to anything. Yeah. And so he came in, I got in an accident. And I guess the way it all worked is the lady, once he figured out everybody was okay, the lady, they were having a conversation and she's like, please tell me you're not bringing Tony Banks back as quarterback next year. And he's like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to be at a dinner right now with Trent Green. And so he handed out like business cards to everybody, like took off that because he was only a few blocks away from the restaurant. Okay. Came down to the restaurant and so he's told that story. And I remember later telling my wife, I was like, I got to play for this guy. This guy just, he's picking out glass at the table after. At least he waits till after we ate.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So you could tell that he was a player's coach and that he was a huge heart, was all in emotionally. I mean, that's the thing. The guy wears his heart on his sleeve for sure.
Yes, definitely. All
right,
and now he and I are great friends, and I talk to him at least every 2 weeks.
That's
great. We had a great moment at the Hall of Fame, and he went in this past summer. And
sure.
Would you say he was your favorite coach, or is that something you can even pick? Because I'm sure there's different.
Yeah, I always say coach because, we were together 5 years here, 1 year in St. Louis, 6 years. Our relationship now, I had great relationships with Cam and with Mike Martz and with Norv Turner. Those are probably the four. Al Saunders I still keep in contact with, our offensive coordinator here, and he was a receiver coach in St. Louis.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys but the one I'm closest to would be Coach Vermeil. Yeah.
Okay. Two more things. I want to play one more clip, and then I want Jillian to ask you about the kids. I want to get your reaction after you hear this clip. This is Steve, I'm forgetting his name. Kurt Warner. I almost said Steve Warner, who was my high school football coach. Kurt Warner at his Hall of Fame speech.
In the ultimate team game, I'm not much for singling guys out because all of you played a special role in my being here. But I would like to recognize one teammate who had a more profound impact on me than any other, Trent Green. Our paths crossed in the most incredible of ways, and I acknowledge you could easily be the one standing up here tonight. But the class that you showed while dealing with the toughest of situations is etched in my mind. Your willingness to share your football secrets so I could succeed was incredibly valuable. But the character you displayed and the way you modeled the definition of teammate was priceless. Those lessons followed me the rest of my career. Thanks for sharpening my character with your own.
That's a pretty cool moment. That was a cool moment. Did you expect that? And did you go to the to his induction into the Hall of Fame? I mean, why did you go?
He invited me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he invited me, and for years everybody tried. Even that season, the 99 season, right? The media, they wanted to make us, they're like, oh, the division, right? It's like, okay, let's get, oh, he hates him. And you just have listened over the last hour my story, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, even though his story is a lot different, I didn't work in a grocery store, but
that's true.
Went back and was hanging out for a year trying to figure out, and I was, watching TV, hoping somebody would get hurt so I could get a chance. And then I went to Canada, and he went to the Arena League. I mean, our stories are very similar.
Yeah.
Similar and different. I mean,
sure.
The story with he and Brenda and their kids and their marriage and that, I mean, so there's similarities, but there's differences. And so I always, I can't fault. I mean, he got an opportunity, and he made the most of the opportunity.
Yeah.
And I can't fault him for that. So we've remained friends over the years. We, our kids are similar ages. We've had conversations. He and I were together for Coach Vermeil's induction. A cool thing that Coach did is when he put his gold jacket on, he had Carol, his wife, put the gold jacket on him, but he got clearance from the Hall of Fame to have Ron Jaworski, myself, and Kurt all up on stage with him when he got the jacket.
Oh, that is
he wanted his 3 quarterbacks up there with him.
Wow.
And the NFL had never allowed that before. And so they're like, well, we've never done that before. And he's like, well, what's wrong with being the first?
Yeah,
so I'm going to, so Kurt and I got to spend some great time this summer at Coach's induction. So, I'm proud of what he's done and how he's kind of, moved on from his playing career and what he's doing now with the NFL Network. And he works with Kevin on Westwood One, does the Monday night game. Yep. So, I have.
Please know that by me playing that clip, I wasn't trying to get you to talk about any sort of division.
You wanted tears on this podcast.
I did. I mean, that's why we run cameras, buddy. No, but seriously, I was trying to prep for this last night, and when I came across that clip, and I knew about that clip, but I was trying to find it, and I just thought that is such a cool moment, and I wanted to get your raw reaction to seeing it again.
And it was because of his entire career. Hall of Fame career.
Yeah.
The number of players he played with, the Hall of Fame players he played with, the Hall of Fame coaches that he was with.
Yeah.
And I was the only one that he individually said by name, other than his family members and stuff like that. But, so yes, that meant a lot. And I've told him that. I've had those conversations with him. I just, it meant a lot. And for him to take his moment and single me out during his moment, it does. It means a lot. And
deserve too, because that you are a person of such high character. There's a lot of people that don't conduct themselves in the way that you did. And Alex Smith is another one that I hear frequently with how he conducted himself when Patrick Mahomes was, drafted. And I have so much respect for people in the league when it's such a money game. It's such a, what's the word I'm looking for? Cutthroat game,
yes.
And you could have as easily not conducted yourself that way, and you did, and you should be recognized for that. And so that's really the reason that I wanted to play that clip.
You.
So
my thing is you don't have control over what the coaches are going to say or what the GM's going to say or what the owner's going to say. Is the decision based on money? Is the decision? I'm like, you know what? It's better to have those good relationships, support one another, lift each other up, and somebody else is making the decision. It's like, so I can honestly say in my 15 years in the league that we had a great quarterback room in all of those different stops, because there wasn't a lot of backstabbing or any backstabbing. It was like, hey, what can we do to make this room better? And then whoever's playing is going to get the support of everybody. And I think that's what comes into play with Alex and with Patrick when he was backing Alex up that first year. So But thank you for saying so.
Yeah, well, I'm going to let the last question go to Jillian, but just so everybody knows, I wanted to talk about Rodney Harrison and that injury and maybe any conversations that took place after that. I wanted to talk about your relationship with Carl, Jared Allen, who was a great friend of us at Q104,
Okay, yeah.
Mark Bowrichter, who's been on this podcast and is a great friend of us at Q104, and you threw the 99-yard pass. You're one of, 13 quarterbacks, I think, all time that's ever thrown a 99 yards.
It's just one that it's one of the. I think Patrick's broken every.
He hasn't broken that one yet.
Every other record, but that's one I could hang my hat on that it won't be broken. Yeah.
Tony Gonzalez obviously was a huge part of your success. Eddie Kedison, Dante Hall. I mean, there's so many people that I want to. Priest Holmes. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Don't forget all those studs in front of me too. Two Hall of Famers.
Willie Rofe and Will Shields. Oh my gosh.
Brian Waters, the Chiefs Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Casey Wigman should be and will be hopefully.
Yes.
One day.
You've lived a hell of a life, bro.
John Tate, who I wish
Tate.
we could have played with more.
Yeah.
He was just there for a couple years that played with us, but got an incredible opportunity and payday up in Chicago.
Yep.
So happy for him. But yeah, I swear by those guys. So yeah, my whole everybody talks about memorabilia. I have like one little wall that has some stuff on. I have Junior Seau there. I have Cal Ripken there.
Oh, that's cool.
I have Muhammad Ali on there. George Brett was nice enough to sign something. So I have like this one wall that I have some stuff on, but everything else is like my teammates. It's me and my teammates. So I have all the jerseys of the different guys that were in the huddle with me, and because that mean we go down to
family
to play pool or ping pong or whatever
so
down
cool.
in the basement. It's like surrounded by my guys. So
right.
Yeah.
Well, I know we're going to talk about the kids.
Yep.
I was telling you as you came into the door, we have mutual friends in the Kraft family. Brian Kraft, who with Midwest Land Group, his son Clay is good friends with your son Derek, and of course Clay. Did Derek play? Where's he going to school? Where did he go to school?
He went to SMU.
SMU.
Yeah, he played
all right.
at SMU.
All right. So he's not a KU guy then.
No.
All right. But Clay is definitely a KU. I'm far from being a KU guy, but I will remind everybody that KU is no longer playing in the NCAA basketball tournament. And Kansas State is still alive.
I was like, why is he bringing all this up? It's going back to K-State still being
I brought it up because I told Clay that I would drop his name on the podcast. And so that's how we got there. So
he's going to love that you dropped it in that manner. Yes,
I thought about reading through everything that we had in an exchange, but it's probably not appropriate to do that. But
you didn't bring up the fact that Brian and Clay and I think
won the golf tournament, the Heartland Premier Golf Tournament. You guys played right behind us.
We were the group behind you, and I think our score was significantly better than yours.
Much. I mean, I was the only one carrying my team. I had a couple.
And we have to then mention that you do have a golf tournament coming up.
I do.
I hate to not bring that up since you bring up golf.
So June 5th, Ronald McDonald House Charities of Kansas City.
Good stuff.
I've been partnered with them for, I guess this is probably the 12th or 13th year that we've been partnered together. I had my own tournament when I was playing, and my wife and I have been involved with Ronald McDonald House Charities since back in the Washington days. So for 30 plus years, and it's a great organization, do a lot of good, and so. If you want to help support it, rmhckc.org.
Is that typically around the same time every year that you have that
It's
tournament?
always the first Monday of June. Yeah.
There you go.
So
all right. Are you going to be playing in the Heartland Premier Golf Classic on June 16th?
I hope so.
June 16th. It's going to be at Adams Dairy golf course there in Green Valley. And so is that Green Valley or Blue Springs? Maybe that's considered. That's the tweener, that Adams Dairy Road.
Yeah.
Anyway, Heartland Premier will be on the 17th. We had a good time having you there.
For me, it all works on my world now. And I know you're going to get to is the volleyball world. So my daughter is.
Well, let's get into it. Talk about the kids.
The last time I talked to you, we talked kids and where they were and what they were doing. And so, that's just what a mom wants to know.
All right. So our oldest, TJ, he went to Northwestern, graduated. He's now working in Chicago, living in Chicago. Loves the whole, he's at that age. He's 25. He likes the big city, living in the city, just loving it all. So really proud of him. Yep. He ended up with an undergrad and 2 master's degrees.
Wow.
And because of, he ended up having a medical year.
Okay.
He redshirted, and then he had a medical year. He had a really bad foot injury at Northwestern and was able to come back and really had a 7th year if he wanted the COVID year. Yep. And he's like, Dad, I'm good. He's like, I'm so much older than everybody in the locker room. But like I said, he kept getting, I'm like, you can relax. He's like, well, at this point in time, he was there as a walk-on, then earned a scholarship. And so he's like, well, if they're going to keep paying for it, I'll just keep getting degrees. So he's doing well. And we get to see him quite a bit being in Chicago. Derek, on the other hand, went to SMU, did undergrad there, ended up doing grad school out at Long Island University.
Wow.
To continue playing and to work on his MBA, and then had an opportunity. I'm laughing because
why are you laughing?
Well, the owner of an Italian football league team called him and said, "Do you want to come over here and play on my team?" And
what?
I know. So he's living in Bologna, Italy.
Oh my God.
Playing for the I got to make sure I say it right. The Warriors. It used to be the Bologna Warriors, but now it's they've combined some teams. And
okay.
So anyway, he's had 2 games so far this year. He's playing. He's having fun. He's living in Italy. He's going.
What position does he play?
He's a quarterback also.
Cool.
And So he's like, "What do you guys think?" And my wife and I are both like, "Go!"
Yeah.
He's 23.
Good for him.
Doesn't have a serious girlfriend. I'm like, you can always come back and get your MBA if you want to get your MBA. You can always come back and work. 6 months living in Italy, and then you can figure it out from there.
Yeah.
It's like this is an opportunity that I've never been to Italy, so at some point in time we're going. None of our other kids have been, so we're just like, yeah. So anyway, and then
it's volleyball.
And then
That's
volleyball.
your life
She's Janelle is 17 now. She's a junior at Blue Valley North. They won state a couple years ago. They went to state last year. Her club team is doing really well, and she committed to University of Cincinnati last summer.
Nice.
So she's going to be the setter there, and I've already told Travis Kelce, you've got another Bearcat on your hands, and so
I like it.
That's cool.
Yeah, so he's all pumped for her, I have no complaints.
And Julie's good.
She is.
I've got to meet her a couple times, and she's just a hoot.
Yeah. We're we've got a there's going to be an event before the draft. Down at Power and Light.
Okay.
If you guys haven't heard, Lainey Wilson's going to be performing.
I did hear that. Yeah.
I didn't hear that
before the draft. So we're going to kind of tie it together. Ronald McDonald House Charities is going to do an event down there prior to the concert.
Okay.
That we're hoping to do as a fundraiser, and I'm going to get some of either the current players and former players, because they're all going to be there for the NFL draft.
Sure.
Have come in, talk maybe a little football talk, and then. Lainey Wilson can't go wrong with that.
No, that's going to be amazing.
I know.
It'll be a packed house for sure.
I was like, they're like, "Hey, could you come MC this event?" And then I'm like, "Wait," and then stay and watch Lainey Wilson. I'm like,
let me see.
Let me see. I was like, "Yeah,
that's awesome."
Yeah, so we're looking forward to that. The draft's coming to Kansas City. So Kansas City is like NFL Central, right? They have AFC Championship game. Now you got the Super Bowl champions in the parade. You got the draft coming up. And then next season, the opener has to be in the defending Super Bowl champions' home. So we'll have that. So this is NFL Central. So a lot going on around Kansas City, a lot going on with my family. Thanks for asking. And just enjoyed being on here with you guys.
I'm thrilled and super honored that you took the time out with everything that you got going on in your life to drive all the way out here to RP Enterprises Global Headquarters.
Yes, I was wondering. I'm going to be honest. I haven't been out this way.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I love it.
Thank you.
Can I go any further? Oh, yes, you can. Trust me, I live even further. So yes,
I kept checking the GPS. I'm like, am I going the right way? Am I still going the right way?
And I didn't tell you get a gift for being here.
Oh, shoot. Yes, I got to bring up that copy. Okay, yes. So as you might have remember when we started the show, I talked about Brown Piercy Cattle Company. Here we go. I don't have my glasses on, so I'm probably going to screw this all up. Brown Piercy Cattle Company. Yeah, we're going to give you a gift box of 4 premium thick cut steaks, 4 of their famous steak burgers, and 2 family size roasts, and 4 pounds of 93% lean ground beef from Brown Piercy Cattle Company at brownpiercycattle.com. So,
I love that.
So it wasn't all for nothing. It wasn't all for nothing.
Good.
But you get hit up all the time to do these podcasts and all of these different things. And the fact that you took the time out to be a part of what we're trying to build here means the world. Thank you so much. And we would love to have you back sometime, anytime. We would love to have you back.
That'd be great. Always great catching up.
So much fun to have former Kansas City Chiefs quarterback Trent Green on episode 33 of the Papa Ron podcast. For Jillian, Greg, Trent Green, I'm Ronnie Phillips. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to the Papa Ron podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, hit subscribe now on a podcast platform. Follow the Papa Ron podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok.
And
While you're there, like, comment, and share. Until next time, thanks for listening to the Papa Ron Podcast. Papa Ron Podcast.